I'm just going to talk about some criteria for a cult. Because I know there's a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses out there who, if you say they're in a cult, they are not going to believe you or laugh at you or think that you must be crazy to think they're a cult. And I was one of them. I mean, I remember a clear time when I was out in the ministry. And somebody at the door opened it to me and another girl. And she didn't try to see, she should have really been a little bit more engaging. But all she did was, "You're a cult?" And she slammed the door in our face. And me and her just looked at each other and we started laughing. And we were like, she thinks we're a cult? Like, oh my gosh, all these crazy apostates, you know? So, so we just continued on our way. But the fact is, most people of the general public don't know the real definition and don't know what actually constitutes a cult. Because if you look up a dictionary and look for cult, depending on the dictionary, you will get a lot of different definitions. A lot of dictionaries think cults are very small groups of people and, you know, doing really strange things. But no, that's not always the case. And a lot of people think that to be in a cult, you have to kind of be already a little bit crazy. And again, that's not the case. So if you're a Jehovah's Witness and somebody says you're in a cult, don't jump to the conclusion and say that this person doesn't know anything. Because maybe you should look into what a cult actually is, according to experts. Okay, so there's a lot of experts out there who look into cults and study them. The main one that you've probably heard a lot of, at least if you're, well, really all over the world, you probably would have heard a lot of them. But especially if you're, you know, Canada, US, that area of the world, would be Stephen Hassan, or Hassan. You know, I'm not really quite sure how he likes it pronounced, but I think he likes it, Stephen Hassan. So he wrote several books. The first one he wrote was in the 80s, I believe. It was Combating Cult Mind Control, and he got the rights back and re-edited it and released it again in the 90s, Combating Cult Mind Control. And then he wrote another one, Freedom of Mind. So this guy was in a cult for a number of years. Not a long time. He wasn't born in one. He wasn't raised in one. But he does know from being very deeply involved what it's like to be in a cult and what cults do to attract people into their group and to keep it growing. And according to Stephen Hassan, it really does not matter how big this group is. So I'm sorry, but that little Facebook post that was going around, written by a witness, 4 witnesses, about we're not a cult because we have 8 million members. That really does not matter in the least. There are larger groups that are considered cults. Cults are not always religious. It can be political. It could be like social type cults. It could be commercial. So, for example, when you think of those marketing pyramid schemes that are out there, a lot of housewives are involved trying to sell things, and they have, you know, usually they have to sell a certain amount of things so that they can get their product free, or, you know, it basically, whoever's at the top is benefiting the most, and all their little minions are down there. And a lot of people get tricked into going into some of these things because they're told how easy it's going to be, how beneficial it is. It's so easy for them to make money, and a lot of times they actually lose money and they end up hating themselves because they feel like something must be wrong with me because I'm not doing good with this. And that's not necessarily the case. It's more likely that it's just not an easy product to sell. And unless you're willing to be very, you know, kind of not ethical in your approaches and kind of lying sometimes to make that sale, you might not. And a lot of these pyramid type companies are like that. They lock you in. You have to agree to a certain amount of time, and then you're stuck, and then you beat yourself up over it because you're not doing good, and it must be on you because this is a really easy thing to do, right? Wrong. So those are actually considered cults as well. Marketing or commercial cults. When you think about people that are involved, well, usually not by choice, but sometimes they get involved through lying and manipulating so human trafficking, for example. There is an example in Combating Cult Mind Control, the second edition. It might be in the first edition as well, but I think it's just in the second one, of a woman who was a model, and she was tricked into, basically she started getting involved in human trafficking, and it got to a point where she didn't have a choice because she was scared for her life. But she just told that, oh, she'd be great for modeling, and it just started out doing a photo shoot, and it wasn't anything too crazy. And all of a sudden, she was deeply involved in this human trafficking, scheme, and couldn't get out of it. So human traffickers are also considered commercial cults. They have a lot of people that work for them, and they can't really do anything about it. So that's another example. Now, both of these cults are a little bit, the human trafficking one definitely does exert a lot of mind control and manipulation, but in a lot of cases, it's more like brainwashing. So here's a big thing that separates the type of cult you're in. So really, you can't really say this cult's worse. You can say this cult's worse than another and another, but there is simple criteria that can tell you what is a cult and what is it. But the mind control factor is a big thing. So now here's two words that people often interchange to mean the same thing, and it's actually not the same thing. So we have to be careful when we're using these words. So mind control and brainwashing are actually two different things. So brainwashing is often in extreme situations. So a person becomes brainwashed when they are so scared for their life in the here and now, in the present. Maybe they're being beaten, or they're being starved in another way, deprived of things, thrown in a dark basement or something. And those people become brainwashed because they end up doing whatever it is that their abuser or whomever wants them to do because of being treated so terribly. It's more or less for their own safety. But they actually, in that environment, while they're still under the control of this person, they will actually start to view this person as, literally in their mind, they'll view this person as whatever this person tells them to view them as. So this person could be raping them and beating them and abusing them in every way, and could also be telling them that, they're the Messiah, and they will believe that because they get to a point where they're just acting out of self-preservation. So what plays into this, and it plays into all cults, whether you're being brainwashed or under mind control, the cognitive dissonance factor. Okay, so cognitive dissonance is where if you can control one aspect of a person, you can control everything about that person. So for example, if somebody can control the information a person receives, then they can control their behavior, they can control their thoughts, they can control their emotions, because we can only process and be as much as the information that we are receiving. So if we are not getting all the information, then we cannot know all the information, and therefore we can only think a certain way, feel a certain way, behave a certain way. Okay, but this happens in all ways. So the information was actually added in by Stephen Hassan, and he made something called the BITE model. So the B stands for behavior, the I stands for information, the T stands for thoughts, and the E stands for emotions. So information is what he added in there, but the cognitive dissonance theory is actually just about behavior, thoughts, and emotions. Okay, so if you're getting beaten and raped by somebody, and eventually your behavior just comes to a point where you have to submit, you have to just shut up and take it because it means your life. Okay, then eventually what happens is our minds can only, it's going to sound a little bit crazy, but it's been proven. Our minds can only think of so many things, basically. So if our behavior, if we behave in a certain way, we cannot also think differently to that or feel differently. We have to kind of be, we can't be too dissonant in our behavior and our thoughts, or our thoughts and our feelings, and vice versa. We have to kind of, we have to think and behave and feel in a similar way, so that we can not have so much of a distance there. It is just human nature. So if a person's brainwashed and now because they're being beaten, raped, whatever, and they're just behaving in a way that their abuser wants them to behave, and their abuser is also saying, I'm the Messiah and I have a right to do this and you're a worthless piece of crap. Well, now they're going to start believing that, they're going to start thinking that, they're going to start feeling that, because they cannot, because of how they're behaving, they can't justify their behavior in their head if they don't also believe what they're doing. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is what cognitive dissonance is. So it applies in brainwashing, and it also applies in mind control. But mind control is a little bit different to brainwashing in the sense that people gain your trust, they start out being your friends, you don't suspect any, foul play. Everything seems really great and wonderful, and it starts out with the love bombing, and it's when you're involved and you're already at the point where you trust this organization or this person or whatever, that they start to then add in the other thing, the deceptions, the things they didn't really inform you about, or they start to change in some way. And by that point, you're already so involved and you trust this organization, this group, or this person so much that you just start allowing things to take place that if this was right away what it was presented to be, you would not have gotten involved. But because it's happening when you're already so far involved, you just kind of let it go because the cognitive dissonance has played into it. You are already involved, your behavior is already involved, your thoughts and your feelings are already involved. So for you to have something nag at you and say, hey, this doesn't seem right, this is your thoughts coming into play, maybe something's triggering your emotions, this isn't right, this behavior that I'm seeing within this group isn't right. But because you're already so involved, you shut that down. Okay, so that's the difference. And when we look at Jehovah's Witnesses, it is all mind control. It's and yet it's easy just to say, oh, they're brainwashed, they're brainwashed, they're brainwashed. But it's not really the same thing, because witnesses don't come to your door and then pound you into believing whatever they have to say for the sake of your own survival in the here and now. No, they gain trust, they're really friendly, they love bomb you, and it seems like, oh, well, this seems like an interesting interpretation of the Bible, and then the way they present their information, they're leaving out stuff in the beginning that you might be like, well, why does that mean this? They don't tell new people all this stuff. They leave out certain bits of information until they feel you're ready to accept whatever they have to say. So this is mind control, and this is the difference. And also another thing that makes a cult is how much control they just exert over your life. You pretty much have no freedom in a cult. Now, that's another thing where if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're going to say, I have all the freedom I want. I can do whatever I want. I don't have to, I live in my own house. I have my family. We don't live on some weird piece of land where all the cult members live. You don't have to live in a colony of other cult members to be in a cult. Although that would make your cult a little bit more so on the extreme end, because there is really never any time for you to be out of the frame of mind. Okay, but as a Jehovah's Witness, you are controlled. You can't even think about something without wondering to yourself, oh, well, should I even really be thinking about this? This might be a bad thought that I'm having right now. You might be in a cult if you actually think that maybe you shouldn't be thinking about something. And that happens a lot because you're constantly being told at conventions, assemblies, meetings, whatever, that there are just some thoughts that we shouldn't entertain. We have to, if your hand is making you stumble, rip it off and throw it away from you, right? So if you even as far as your thoughts, it is all very controlled. Everything is controlled. Your surroundings are controlled. Your family is not everybody lives in an all Jehovah's Witness household, but immediate families tend to be all Jehovah's Witnesses. And when you live in that environment all the time, you're always on guard, because you can't even truly just be, able to just breathe and just be yourself around your own family. Okay. Because your family's involved too. So you have to always be thinking the Jehovah's Witness way. And if you do work out of the home, some witnesses work together, but some people don't work with other witnesses. They work, wherever with worldly people. But you're conditioned already that you are going into an environment of worldly people. So when we're with worldly people, we are always on guard. And it doesn't matter if you're at work or at school. As a child, you don't make close friends with worldly people. You might be friends with them as far as friends go while you're at work. You will never, or at school, but you will never hang out with them outside of school or outside of work. You'll find every excuse you can to get out of those extracurricular things that you might have to do. Even if it's for your job, even if you have to do this because this is your job, they encourage you to quit your job in those instances. So you're very, very controlled. Okay. Just the control is unbelievable. And when it comes to just anything, even little things, if you're thinking about getting your ears pierced, there was a trend for a while there where some people had the 3 earrings. And there were some girls that did it in the hall and they got talking to by the elders. This is a worldly looking thing. This doesn't look good. You can't get your ears pierced up here. It just doesn't look good. If you're thinking of dyeing your hair, well, it has to be a natural looking color. Otherwise, it's just too worldly looking and it doesn't look good. Men can't grow their beards. It just doesn't look good. Even though where on earth does the Bible say that? When it comes to your clothes, you have to be very, very, you have to think all the time of any little decision that you make. And it makes it so hard to make decisions. And that is another sign that you're in a cult. So if you are a person who takes forever just to make a very simple decision, whether or not you like the way something looks or whatever, you're in a cult because you're thinking all the time about the outside influence. What is this going to look like to other cult members? What is this going to look like to the elders? What is this going to look like for Jehovah? You know, you're constantly thinking about everything else but yourself. So you can't even make small decisions, and it's really hard. I mean, when I first stopped going to meetings, it's a good thing my boyfriend is very, very understanding and patient, because we'd be at a restaurant and I couldn't even order. Like, I just couldn't order. It took me forever, like forever, to just make a decision about what I wanted to eat. And I mean, that's not something that you normally would have to consult God for or something, but it's just, I was so bad at making decisions that I couldn't even decide what to order. I had no idea, like, so many options, I didn't know what to do. And I would often just order whatever my boyfriend ordered, or I would take so long to make a decision. And he is very patient and he never would let me make the easy choice. It wasn't like, no, you have to get what you want. And I was like, I don't know. And I'm like, but I don't know, and I don't care. And he would just say, no, pick something. And it would get to a point where he'd force me to make decisions. So, but you know what? As hard as it was in the beginning, I really needed that, because now I can make decisions a lot easier in life. Little things don't faze me in any way. And I've even made a lot of big decisions. I mean, I've come a long way. I opened my own business after leaving, and it was a scary, very scary risk. I've made bad decisions and I've made good decisions, but the bad ones haven't, scared me from making other decisions, because it just helped me to think, okay, well, I learned from this decision. I'm not going to go that road again next time, this presents itself. So when you're a cult member, though, you are so scared to make decisions, because it might be the wrong decision. And if it's the wrong decision, it could be direly consequential for you. So another thing that all cults will do, and yet Jehovah's Witnesses seem to think that they're the only organization that does this: disfellowshipping, removing people from amongst themselves, kicking people out, whatever you want to call it. Pretty much all cults will do this, and they might not have a actual term in paper for what they call it, but if they gather that somebody is being starting to question too much, or somebody has done something that the leaders don't desire, or whatever, shame, they will shame them. All cults use shame. So kicking them out, telling other people, you shouldn't associate with this person anymore. So Jehovah's Witnesses, you are not the only ones to do this. You shouldn't be proud of it either. But they seem to be proud of it, because they seem to think, what other Christian organization does this? We are the only ones that live up to the Bible and actually do this. Well, first of all, you can interpret the Bible many, many different ways. And a lot of people don't interpret it to say that you should just kick out people and cut them off from all their family and friends. That's just your guys' interpretation of that, and a lot of other cults. And you just don't realize that because you don't know anything about anything but your own group, because of the information control. Okay, so there's a lot of information control happening when you're a witness. You can't look outside for information. You have to get all your information from Watchtower and, the books and everything else. So you might say, I'm allowed to watch the news. well, okay, you're allowed to watch the news, but I wonder how many times you have actually seen something that was, you know, negative towards Jehovah's Witnesses, you know, negative publicity. If there was ever like a actual show made specifically to showcase, for example, the child abuse that happens in your organization, would you have watched that? I bet you a lot of you would not have watched it, because you would have thought to yourself, oh, apostate lies, I don't need to see this. Who programmed that thought in your head? Because normal people aren't scared to watch or listen to or hear, you know, criticizing information about something that they may be involved with, because they can determine for themselves. They're not scared about what the outcome is going to be if they decide that this is truthful information, because normal organizations, healthy organizations, aren't going to shame a person for wanting to leave or for questioning. They're not going to separate them from all their family and friends. Okay? So why do you think that way? Anyway, this is just a couple of thoughts right now. I'm just going to stop it here for now, and I might make another video in the future going into more details about cults and stuff like this, but my boyfriend just got home and I just want to chill out for a bit. So have a good day, everybody.